Some of the content covered may be graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely it's really
Just, I love stories like this because it's
someone scared to death.
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
Just
there are countless stories bad enough.
people that you shouldn't fuck with.
Right, and the JFK assassination all into real.
From the Mistake on the Lake, good evening, everybody. It's 8:15. You're in the right place at the right time. Coming over the internet at all sorts of speeds. Ours is, as usual, buffering and slow. But anyways, I'm here. Dan's here.
What is happening?
And Buddha's here. And we might not be in the same room. I don't know. This volume might be a little high, so I'm going to cut it down here. But we're all...
This show will sound much more exciting if you listen to something else.
Yeah, I would agree. So, anyway, I'm going to start off with some news here, and we will not be doing the typical news story. So, anyway, you can get all that elsewhere. But anyways, I just saw here on the news. Headline is from IGN: Space object that passed by Earth was likely from aliens, says Harvard professor. A space object that passed by Earth in 2017 was likely from aliens, according to Harvard professor Avi Loeb. In Loeb's new book, Extraterrestrial, it examines a cigar-shaped object named the, I can't pronounce this, Oumuamua Oumuamua. I probably butchered that, but
sound it out.
It's Oumuamua. So however you pronounce that.
I think that's
anyway, that flew by Earth in 2017 at 196,000 miles per hour. The professor believes that the origin of the object believed to be from aliens. He spoke to CBS News. But anyway, at first people thought, well, it must be a rock, just like asteroids or comets that we've seen before within the solar system. But as they got more data on it, it looks very weird. So I guess it's in the shape of a cigar or whatnot. But, I mean, 196,000 miles per hour. Like, how do you even catch something going that fast past the Earth?
a giant net.
My question is, what did NASA say about it?
Well, that's, I don't have that.
Say nothing.
Of course not. But
Way to be unprepared. One question, you're already derailed.
hey, I'm just reporting on what's out there, okay? But so yeah, cigar-shaped object went by Earth. They think it might be aliens. And if NASA's putting anything out there, it's never a straight answer. That's the acronym for NASA, as some people say. But
well, they would never admit to it anyway if it was an alien.
With a
Can't
cigar,
say that. Hey, you know what? Speaking of what you guys were talking about, and I'm not talking about anything political, but I do have to bring up in the stimulus package. I don't know if anybody saw this. It kind of slipped through. One of the things that was put in that is that after it's signed and goes into effect, the Pentagon has 180 days and they have to declassify and release like all their information on UFOs.
Wow.
Well, wait. And so is that thing going to really happen?
That was in the bill.
Well, that bill passed, right?
Yeah, so technically, but I mean, there's also the whole thing. Do you really think they're going to do that? Probably not. But it's kind of funny that somebody was like, I'm just going to nudge this on in there and hopefully nobody catches it.
I still haven't gotten my check yet, but I also filed.
You're a bitch.
All right. But I filed via paper, and so I'm not sure if like
You're gonna check then.
yeah, and that's but with how the mail is right now, who knows?
Oh yeah, you could see that in July.
Well,
I
go
am
ahead.
so mad because I have had a package sitting at the post office in the Cleveland Distribution Center since the 27th.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
What-
And I
what is it, a
finally got an
Christmas present
update
or something?
today. Yeah, to myself.
Okay.
But it was I finally got a notification today, and every day that I've been checking since then, it just says in transit, and they just keep changing the date. So from the 27th to today's the 8th. So I finally got an update. And you know what it is? January 8th, updated 1:11 p.m. in transit. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it probably is going to get routed through like Pennsylvania, then up to Alaska, and then through the Great Plains, and then maybe you'll get it back. But
Maybe.
so what's actually it's actually got dropped off by the cigar that passed through here. So all right, so other space style news. SpaceX launched its 50th previously flown rocket. Looks like they took a some sort of satellite for another country up there. So privatized space industry. Seems like it's going well. I know that they just had a failure on the rockets that they're trying to send people to Mars with. So who knows how well that's going to go. But I mean, as far as this, it seems like it's working out all right.
Did Elon Musk's car with the teddy bear or whatever the hell was in it, did it land yet? The car he flew up in space?
No, there was like a dude in a spacesuit.
Oh, is that what it was? Oh, okay. I don't know what the hell I was looking at. But did it land?
No, it went into space.
It's still in space?
Did I think so?
Are we
Here.
really still having this conversation right now? Like, what are you two even talking about?
So when they launched a SpaceX rocket, they had put one of the Teslas. I don't know if it was a Model S or whatnot, but they had launched it. It was one of those convertible Teslas, and in the driver's seat was like a mock space guy or whatnot. It was just a spacesuit, but
Here, Elon Musk sent a $100,000 Tesla Roadster to space a year ago. It has now traveled farther than any other car in history. And in February of 2018, Elon Musk has launched his $100,000. Oh, that's just the same thing. His $100,000 Tesla Roadster into space on the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. So
That
evidently, as of October 8th, 2020, it has floated past Mars. So yes, it's still up there.
Wow. Okay.
and no teddy bear.
No teddy bear. I don't know what the hell I was thinking about. Okay.
Just picture a teddy bear.
Strong opening, everybody.
All right. Well, we get a viewer and then it goes away. Good evening, everybody. All right. So, all right. Well, I don't know. Let's dive into the creepy, weird, whatever you guys got. Anyone want to go first?
I can go next. Well, I have actually is not creepy or weird. Mine is just a subject. It's not a story or anything like that. But what I wanted to kind of just talk about and get opinions. Get opinions from you guys, any viewers that are on, or will watch this later. And it's of course car related, which I love cars, as we know. Basically it's the auto industry as a whole, and some of the news that's been happening. For a lot of people that pay attention to the news, the auto news, or people that don't, might not know a lot of this stuff, but So much has changed from 2017 when this show first started till now, as far as the car industry is concerned. For one thing, and it's disheartening to me, and I want to get opinions on it. For one thing, the sedan, the 4-door sedan, the car is completely, it's almost gone. I mean, Malibu is still around, but the Impala is gone. Volkswagen announced the Passat's going to be gone. There's tons of other sedans that are being either axed or going to be axed. And, I want to get opinion on that, of what you guys think of that. I mean, the sedan has been around for decades, many, many, many decades. And now you're being forced, other than a couple foreign cars like the Corolla, Camry, a couple Kias, you're being forced into basically a crossover or a pickup truck or an SUV. And it's really amazing what the auto industry is doing as of recent with getting rid of these cars. And the others, this is kind of a two-part subject. The other part of this subject of the change of the auto industry is how 40 years from now, you're going to be hearing people say, "Hey, I remember when cars used to make noise or when cars had engines." Everything is going electric. These auto industries are spending, billions and billions. I think GM is spending $27 billion, Ford, Toyota, in going into electric. By the end of this decade, so many of these car companies want to be mostly electric. And it's another unbelievable thing that these cars, and I understand what the ramifications are. They want to try to make everything more environmental, better for the environment, right? Less pollution, less using oil, gas, whatever. And I understand that. But as consumers, which you guys are, I am too, what's your opinion on, and I'm not even going into the fact that right now there's nowhere near even remotely close to enough charging stations anywhere for electric cars. What's your guys' opinion on both of those subjects? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think I personally think the auto industry is almost dead. I mean, the cars are the most boring, ugly-looking things on the road anymore, except for a few of them that are nice, cars that I can't afford. But what's your guys' opinion on all this?
I think a huge part that people don't understand with the electric cars is they sit there and say, we're not causing any carbon emissions, but you're also running power plants to charge your electric cars. That power has to come from somewhere.
Right.
Like, it's not
Great
like
point.
you're driving around with a solar panel and it's charging your car. Like,
Yeah,
that
right.
does exist. That is a thing. But if you're in somewhere like Ohio or Michigan or Minnesota, like places that aren't getting a ton of sun all year round, which is virtually a majority, that doesn't happen in the U.S. I don't know if it's actually a majority, but you know what I'm saying. Like, you're not on the coast. You're not in
Right.
California, Texas,
Florida.
like places
Right.
like that. Anywhere inland, like, you always have that more inclement weather. And I think that, yeah, it's probably cool. Like, yeah, I'm not using oil, but I'm also, getting charged from a nuclear power plant. So there are carbon emissions. You're just not
Right.
seeing them.
Well, that, and also I think about some of the things that they're doing with the smartphones and the wireless charging technology is, I think they're trying to gear people to get shorter bursts of charging, in a quicker volume. So, like, example, like most people, they put their smartphones on the charge when they go to bed at night.
Right.
They're trying to come out with more affordable charging pads and stations so that, like, they're easily accessible. For example, they might have a table with a charging pad built into it. So when you set your phone down, it's getting a charge. They'll build them into countertops, light end tables, things like that. So
I
that
don't see that ever catching on. How could it? I mean, if you're talking about maybe like end table type stuff, maybe, but countertops, and no way, dude. It's not like people are gonna run out and be like, let me just get a new countertop. That stuff. in
No,
general
no,
is
I'm
expensive
saying-
as hell.
No, I think where I'm going with it is just like it'll be a feature that is a selling point to the end user, and so
Like, you can just quick drop it wherever you are, charge it for a couple minutes, pick it up when you go.
Yes.
like that kind of thing.
and so like the day of putting your phone on the charge at when you go to bed is no longer a thing. I mean, even you got to think at the airport, public places, theme parks. they all have, charging stations where, you can plug your phone in. Well, now they're starting to, all these phones have, wireless technology, wireless charging. They might build that into the roads. Somebody I know was working on a project for a company for local transit and buses to have quick charging ports in the street, so that way when a bus pulled up to a light, it would rapid charge the cell to get to the next intersection or whatnot. And so it was small bursts of electricity. But you're right, that electricity has to come somewhere, and it's typically generated from power plants.
Right. That is a great point. I never even thought about that, Buddha. That is a good point. But the other thing too with this, getting right back to the electric cars, is here's where the issue is going to arise. Is that it's already arising? Is that the buying public is not ready, nor do a lot of them want electric cars. A great example is the Volt failure. We were talking about Tesla just before. Tesla has been very popular with electric cars, but it's also a very unique car. That's how that's been able to take off. And Tesla is the reason a lot of these companies are switching over to electric, because they think that's going to be the future. Problem is the buying public's not ready for this. A great example is Cadillac. Cadillac has just announced, they didn't just announce last year, they announced they were going to be completely electric by the year 2026, I think, 27. Their entire lineup was going to be electric. Well, what General Motors had asked all the Cadillac dealers to do, you got two choices. You can either spend about $200,000 to upgrade your dealership for electric cars and all the modifications they had to make to the dealers, or you can do a buyout and GM will just buy you out and you can just ditch the Cadillac brand. Well, to give you an idea, 150 dealers said we're out of here, and they took the buyout because they don't feel they don't feel that there's a real good future for this, at least in the future. There doesn't seem to be much of a buying in. There's not many people buying into this, and obviously the Cadillac dealers, they're out. I mean, I don't know. I think the problem, I guess, is that we are looking at what these car companies are spending billions and billions of dollars to make their, even there's going to be electric trucks soon, by the way. GM's already talking about electric pickups. So at some point, where does it end? Where does the buying public say, screw this, I'm going to stick with my combustion engine and to hell with the electric and not buy newer cars? I think it's going to come to a bad end for the auto industry. And I want to say one more thing, and then I'll drop this, is getting back to the sedan real quick. I truly believe that's another mistake. Everyone getting rid of sedans is right now. Crossovers and SUVs are selling like crazy. I understand it. I understand why they got rid of them, but you've got younger generations, of kids that are going to grow up and start driving. You think they're going to want to drive an ugly-looking crossover that their mom and dad drove? Hell
yeah,
no.
But I don't know. I mean, that's the popular thing right now.
Smart cars. People don't give a shit what cars look like.
Well, you know what?
I see people buying cars more for the technology on the inside than really the way they look. I mean, I guess you could say I have a crossover, but I sometimes, I used to have a Civic, and I had the Civic with all the bells and wheels, and it was a coupe, and yeah. So I miss having the bells and whistles, and I basically traded it for a height advantage. And having the height is nice, but I miss having the heated seats and all the technology that was built in the car. And now my car has CarPlay. That's pretty much it.
And I'm not going to lie. You know me. I absolutely love technology in cars. My next car is going to be, if I can afford it, an Audi A8, which has a ton of technology, in a couple of years. But I agree with the technology. I'm all for that. But I just think that I think, are we going to get to the point where everyone's going to be I guess we are going to get to the point where everyone's forced into a crossover and SUV, but I wonder how that's going to play to a lot of, there's still millions and millions of people out there that don't want an SUV or a crossover, and they're not going to buy a new car. They're going to buy old, so.
Well, I mean, I have two things to add to that. One is you're going to buy what's available. So inevitably they can shape it however they want, unless you have, a different manufacturer. Like Tesla kind of came out of nowhere But like, say it's someone like that that's like, you know what, I don't like what's happening right now. I don't like these cars, blah blah blah. I'm gonna come out with these designs, and assuming they're not just crushed by the auto industry in general, like that's how you're gonna get something different. Because otherwise, you can sit there and buy all the old cars you want, but inevitably that stuff is just gonna disappear. I mean,
Well, eventually, yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously not in like 10 years, but, you know, over time. And the other thing I think, which a lot of people don't maybe seem to think is as prominent here, like definitely in bigger cities, but I think a lot of people now, because of Uber and Lyft, like they don't even want to buy a car. They're totally fine with just getting driven everywhere, and they think
That's
that it's
true.
normal. And that's kind of like, you know, the younger generation. I mean, I was reading some article, and even the one Uber driver I had was telling us about it. Kids, like, dude, you know how it was, man. You're 16. You can't wait to get your license. You want to be able to drive.
Right.
Well, that stuff did when we were kids. So now, you know, if you're 16, you can just go on an app on your phone and get a ride to wherever you want. You don't have to wait for your parents.
True.
You don't have to wait till your buddy gets his license. You literally have access to, with the exception of it not being your car, to be able to go wherever you want.
You know, it's, just looking at a stat here real quick. It says in 2019, SUVs and pickups are grabbing 70% of the market, with 5.9 million sales through June versus 2.5 million cars. So the reason basically is people feel more safe in a car that's higher off the ground, and it's saying that data proves that is true, that people are safer higher off the ground. So the other thing that is, I've heard that, you know, a lot of these car companies have in the works is, versus a lease, it's going to be a subscription model, to where you just continuously pay $400 or $500 a month, you know, per year, and you can have any car you want by that make. So like, you know, Ford, $500 a month, you can go and, for, say you want to drive the latest Escort, and then you want to go to an F-150, you just take it back to the dealer and get the F-150. And so it's more of like a kind of like a Netflix, but for cars.
Are we talking like during the subscription, or when you renew your subscription, you get a different car?
No, during the subscription.
Yeah, so like you can basically, I know again, Cadillac was doing something similar, and it kind of bombed on them, but basically it was where like 1 month, you know, let's say you had the subscription, I think it was $1,000 or $1,200 a month or something, where you could, for 1 month, you could have an Escalade. And then you're like, okay, I don't want this Escalade anymore. Then you decided you wanted a Cadillac sedan, ATS or a CTS or whatever. You could just take the Escalade back, and then for a month you could have the sedan. Then you just keep doing this. So each month you have a different car in your lot, in your driveway.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really see the appeal of that, but I mean, that's just me.
It was, well, I don't know about those other ones, because John's right, there are other companies that are doing it. I know Cadillac, it was a failure, and they got rid of it after like a year. It just did not work out.
I mean, who's going to pay $1,000 to just, you know, plus it's also an insurance nightmare too. You know what I mean? So.
Right.
But
I guess I could see the appeal in, like, you know, hey, you want to rent a car, but I have this subscription. I need a truck today. Or I'm going on a trip, I can grab a van, like, but it's probably still cheaper to just rent said vehicle.
Right.
Yeah. And get unlimited miles.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you get unlimited miles? Every time I've ever rented anything, I just get railed.
What do you mean? We got unlimited miles on the bachelor party for Al.
Really?
Yeah, that van had unlimited miles.
Maybe I'm just terrible at negotiating.
You just don't read what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I thought that stuff came with.
From where, like, well, it doesn't matter. Regardless, that's all beside the point. Let's not talk about my awful attributes here.
All right. But to recap, Dan, I mean, I don't mind the crossover. I own one. I like being higher off the ground. I do miss having some of the bells and whistles that I traded the height for. But long story short, I mean, especially if you're a younger adult with a growing family, you're going to be, in a better spot with more room.
Yeah, you could have, of course, obviously, you could have had all the bells and so the point of the matter is you could have had all the bells and whistles on your SUV that you got. Obviously, you chose not to, but if you had all the bells and whistles on this SUV like you had on the Honda or your Civic, then you would be totally happy then at that point, right?
Yeah,
You're just saying. Go ahead.
But yeah, more car, more material, more room. It's just more money, and so it's how much do you have to spend?
And I've had SUVs, you know that. I've had a couple SUVs before. I mean, I understand. I definitely understand.
I remember the last one you bought.
I paid $2,000 for that thing.
Whatever happened to that thing?
I sold that to my buddy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I sold it to him. So because I could where I live, it's a pain in the ass to have two cars. So
yeah,
but I will get another SUV again, but it'll be like a beater SUV. So because I still understand, I want to put the bikes in the back of it, and you can sitting higher up is kind of cool. So I definitely understand the fun factor of having an SUV and the for that reason, but. It just still sucks that there's so many choices being taken away from the buyer. If you go back 40 years ago, I mean, you could have a coupe, a convertible, SUV, a station wagon,
Right.
You're dating yourself.
Well, I was infant 40 years ago, but I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm still dating myself.
I'll date you. Anyway, so since we were talking about, I had touched on like nuclear power plants and whatnot. Just to correct myself, nuclear power plants themselves, because I wanted to double check this, they don't actually produce carbon emissions, but the mining, I can't even talk. The mining of the materials used are like require a large amount of. God damn, I can't even talk. The stuff that it takes to make it work requires a lot of energy to do so there. But anywhere that's using like a fossil fuel power plant like coal or anything like that, that is going to have like a huge carbon emission, just to touch back on the electric car thing. I just wanted to make sure
Gotcha.
that I wanted to correct myself on that. But that's also going to segue into the next thing I was going to talk about is, so we already touched on aliens for like a minute, and that kind of sparked something that I was reading or looking at last week, which is kind of crazy. So you know how like there's been the whole big boom about UFO sightings just over the years and at different times and blah blah blah, and they kind of like, there's also been like an association where they'll tend to center around like nuclear power plants or anything like that. Have you guys ever kind of come across that being said before?
I've only heard them being like in the middle of nowhere, mostly being seen.
Okay, well, evidently that's one of the things where they're kind of around any type of like radioactive area. So obviously if it's nuclear power. Okay, the point that I'm making, I know this is a terrible way to segue this, but this dude who was being interviewed in an interview that I was watching, and I don't remember his name because I'm a terrible person, but just bear with me. He was basically talking about how the government used UFOs as like a cover up, because what was actually happening is they were testing like nuclear weapons, and there was like a ton of radiation and like a lot of people were getting sick, but they tried to kind of curtail that into saying it was related to UFOs. And what the guy was saying is, in a lot of these areas where they were testing, whether it was just nuclear, anything radioactive power based or like nuclear weapons in general, any kind of testing that they were doing, they said that if the people knew that that's what was happening on American soil, that they would freak out more. So they made up the lie of UFOs and started planting like UFO sightings that would just get thrown out there and reported. And they were actually using UFO sightings as a cover up from the government testing like nuclear weapons and stuff like that, and any kind of fallout, because it was more believable to have the U.S. think that there was aliens coming down to Earth than there is them actually testing bombs around their own like citizens. I thought that was kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's
and the dude that was talking about it, he said he was like, he worked in like the 70s and 80s for the CIA, and he was like actually one of the people that was I forget how they what the it was a disinformation act, that's what it was, and he was like one of the people that would orchestrate these acts and make sure that like nobody caught on, which I thought was really interesting, because not that I wouldn't put it past them to ever lie about anything like that, but I'm like, damn, you guys like you're telling me you guys made up stuff about aliens because you're like, the people ain't gonna believe that, but they'll believe the stuff about aliens.
Well,
He said that they could handle it better.
well, but because most people are just going to call BS on it, you know.
On the UFO stuff.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, let's throw something out there and you know,
Just deflect.
yes, and so nobody would believe it anyways, and if anyone did, they would be, you know, labeled as crazy. So
I am kind of curious to see what kind of stuff is going to get declassified.
nothing.
You know, well, assuming that they do anything, they might throw a bone. But like I was saying, I mean, it's not like I really believe anything that they say anyway.
It'll be like the whole JFK thing, you know, when they said they were going to release a bunch of classified documents that were, you know, stored away for 60 years or whatever, and Trump wanted those, you know, declassified. Well, they released a whole bunch of files, but then there were certain ones that they said
It's just a
they
bunch
were-
of fast food receipts.
Right.
Or
Cleaned
just
out his car. It's got the Wendy's bag in it.
yeah, French fry test from underneath the seat with a crusty old French fry.
No, but seriously, the one they there. But getting back to what you were saying, though, there were like, I don't know, a couple hundred files that they said they could not release, even though they said they were going to release all the files. There were some that they couldn't release. They said because it was a national security threat. So they, you know, it would be considered for national security. They could not release those files. I could see the same thing happening exactly with the UFO thing.
Yeah,
No, that's actually a really good point to bring up, because like obviously whenever they release anything, like everything's redacted. So it's not like you can really read it anyway. But one of the things that they had always mentioned was, if this stuff was real and it came out, which there's actually like some prominent senator or ex-senator that was like real big on like, no, this stuff is real, like and apparently not that prominent because I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but there was like a couple high-ranking officials that were like hell-bent on like, no, this stuff is real. But anyway, so they would say that, you know, if they were to release this stuff, like the general population wouldn't be able to handle it. And I was listening to another interview or podcast about this, and they brought up a really good point, because it was, yeah, like maybe I could handle it, maybe you guys could handle it, maybe the majority of America could handle it. The other half they might just shrug it off and go, whatever, like I don't care. But what about like if this got out worldwide? You know, are there other religions or societies or anything that would just like, it would totally evaporate like anything that they had thought? Like, would it completely maybe substantiate their beliefs, or would it just like totally make everything disappear, and then they're gonna go, holy shit, like what do I do now? Like, I can't accept this. You know, I thought that was kind of a good point, because everyone always looks at it like, no, the American people can handle it. It's like, yeah, but if it comes out in America, it's gonna come out everywhere else.
Right.
well, I mean, some of the stuff that is supposedly true, or what the government has figured out, literally destroys any sort of religious belief system. And so, you know, I guess without going like too crazy into it, but a lot of people, you know, seem to think that the government has found out that humans are really just a product of an alien experiment. And so if your whole life you've been, you know, raised to believe that a religion, like a supreme being, is something that, you know, you worship or whatnot, and then find out that you're actually just a product of an experiment, you know, I think it could really put a hurt on society.
You know,
Maybe if people weren't so far up their own ass, it wouldn't.
Real quick, I know what you're talking about, Buddha, because I mentioned this the last show that we did too, and I couldn't think of the guy's name either. He was the former Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid. He said that, right here I'm looking at the story. He said the U.S. government has been hiding key details about UFOs for years, and this is a Senate Majority Leader. Okay, he's retired now. But I remember reading the story. He said that, Navy pilots, there was plenty of confirmed sightings by Navy pilots. It also details a 1967 report in which an object appeared over a U.S. missile base. At the same time, 10 of the missiles became inoperative.
Was that Malmstrom Air Force Base?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Was that Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana that happened at?
It doesn't say. It just says it details a 1967 report in which an object appeared over the U.S. missile base. It just says U.S. missile base. It doesn't say which one. And he went almost that he stopped short of saying that aliens exist. He didn't go that far. But when I started hearing people like this talk about it, this guy's like 80 years, 78, 80 years old.
Malmstrom Air Force Base. My father-in-law was stationed there. So, yeah, all the missiles were rendered inoperable during this flyover of some sort of UFO. But it's funny you should mention that because, even when he was there, they still talked about that story.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, again, I remember hearing that story before, and I'm like, wow, it's a little strange.
Well, if you're going to take Harry Reid's word for it, him being the Senate Majority Leader just tells me he's a really good liar.
I know, but what's the point of making it up at this point when the guy's 80 years old or whatever he is, 78, 80 years old?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there's Bob Lazar, who's basically just been talking about UFOs and talking about reverse engineering their technology, and he's been keeping that same story forever.
Yeah, he has never changed anything.
Yeah, that's one of those things where didn't they try to blacklist him and all they were just putting the hurt on him, I thought, pretty much forever.
Well, yeah, they said that he never went to MIT and that he never worked at Los Alamos.
That's right. They had ledgers with him on there.
Oh yeah.
And people would talk about how they remember him, and then they're no, they completely wiped his records from, like you said, MIT, and from actually his employment records, from being there, which is at that point, what do you have to lose? They're already trashing your credibility, so you might as well just keep telling your story.
Well, they had also said that he was his character. He had a pirate ship flying outside, or not a pirate ship, a pirate flag outside the front of his house. And so while he was brilliant, they say that the government basically picked him because they could easily put it on him that he was kind of an out there guy already to begin with. And so, yeah, the guy built a jet powered car and he had a pirate flag hanging outside the front of his house. He had put on fireworks shows in the desert. He was involved with a brothel. His marriage fell apart because his wife was cheating on him. And so he had all kinds of outside drama. Aside from being just totally smart, they could also use plausible deniability and be yeah, this guy's crazy. Look at it. Look at everything else that he's involved in. Do you really want to believe him? And so that
sounds like he liked to party.
Yeah.
Yeah. They used to put on that fireworks show out in the desert called Desert Blast. It was one of the biggest in the country's display of fireworks that was privatized. But, in that documentary, there was one part of, did you guys watch the documentary on Netflix about him?
No, I didn't.
No, I started to.
But Jeremy Corbell found a picture of one of their hand scanners that he had been describing for years, and people are like, oh no, this thing doesn't exist, blah blah blah. Well, anyway, he found a picture of this thing, and it had 5 points on it that came out that you put your fingers in between, and he had been describing it for years, and finally Jeremy found a picture of one and brought it to me. He's like, this is exactly what I've been talking about. And so all of these things that he had been saying for years, Bob Lazar, they were clicking. And so it just, it took 30 years for one little piece to become, okay, well, now it's declassified, or it's public knowledge, or it's now just accepted as fact. And so, personally, I believe the story 100%. I don't think he's bullshitting. Like you said, he never changed the story one bit.
Yeah, I think that was like why, the people that actually believe say he's credible, and then everyone else just says he's nuts.
I'm sorry. Who is this again?
Bob
Lazar.
Yeah.
I still don't know who that is. I heard you say the name, but who is that?
We just went over
Yeah,
it.
do we just need to repeat everything we just said?
Did
Did you
guys
check out
just started,
for a minute?
No, you guys didn't mention. You said his name and how he's not credible and this and that, but I don't know the backstory of the guy.
Backstory is that supposedly, so in the 80s, he had gone on a Las Vegas news station under a silhouette talking about the reverse engineering of alien craft at Area 51. And not just Area 51, it was S4, which is a naval base inside of a mountain in or near the Papoose Lake complex out, in Nevada. And so he went under silhouette. Well, then he was afraid that, they were going to kill him. And so he then went public with his, picture and admitted he went under the alias of Dennis the first time he was on the news. And so once he became afraid that they were going to kill him, he basically came out and said, this is me, this is who I am, this is my story. Well, after that, he had been discredited by a bunch of people. In fact, one of the world's leading UFO researchers, who's now since passed, Stanton Friedman, way early back in the Type 3 days, I would say probably it's got to be going close to 10 years now. I interviewed him, and so he never bought any of Lazar, and so he says, he was always under the impression that his claims were false. So it's interesting. I tend to agree more with Bob Lazar's story, and I think that he really did work out there.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard the name before.
It sucks because you'll never know.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the information's out there. I guess you take it with a grain of salt. I don't know.
No, I mean, there's no one will ever confirm it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think, at least in our lifetime anyway. And I think, I'm still on the fence on all this stuff, how I've always been on supernatural and aliens and that. But you got to think of it this way, too. Whenever I think it's all just BS and people are just seeing stuff that's, they don't exist. But then I think, as vast as this universe is, there's so many trillions and trillions of areas of the universe that we don't even know about, that we've never been able to even get near. Or explore. How do we know that there is not something else out there?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, didn't they just find one of those mini planet, or what do they call them?
Planetismals?
Dwarf planets. Is that what it is? Whatever it was. This just recently they found that there's actually a substantial amount of water on one of them, and they said that its atmosphere would be able to. What's that?
I said I did hear about that. Go ahead.
That it would be able to sustain life, but they did say it would probably not be able to sustain human life, but some other type of life, whether it's even just bacteria or whatever, in the lowest form. The fact that they found an area outside of our planet that would be able to sustain life is kind of crazy, but also not surprising because the freaking universe is endless. It's
right.
Infinite.
Right. That's what I said. We can't look at all the areas of the universe. I mean, we can't. We don't know what's 16 trillion miles away,
Yeah. All right, Buddha, you got a story?
That was my story.
Oh, really? Are you serious?
No. That when I started talking about the aliens, that was one of them that we were talking about, and it just kind of snowballed down that road.
Oh.
No, actually, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, because this is something that I also had been looking at a little bit lately, because it's kind of been coming up. Do you remember when I talked about the Skinwalker Ranch? Do you guys remember that story?
Yeah.
Yes.
And basically what the place was and blah blah blah. So randomly, and that whole topic still is fascinating to me. And there's been another documentary that recently came out on it, and it has a new owner, not like new as in like
So Bigelow doesn't own it anymore.
correct. Brandon, I don't know if it's Fugel or I'm assuming Fugel, Brandon Fugel from Adamantium Holdings, and so that's his
Wow.
company.
What- the company name sounds.
Well,
something
that was
else.
actually one of the things that they put when they're like,
Isn't
you
that
know,
the
kinda
stuff
like
that was?
Wolverine
That's what I was
in
saying.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he owns it, and they were talking about doing like that. He was going to allow some press and whatnot to actually go in there and take a look at it and actually get on the property, because if you guys remember, like that place it's gated off. They have armed guards, they have security. Like you are not allowed to go there still. So this guy that I was watching, he was doing like a little, just like an episode on it, but like obviously he can't go there, and when he tried to get a hold of anybody, nobody would return his calls. So he just kind of, went around and just got up as high as he could at whatever, like, little area of land just to see, and he didn't really see anything, but it was like whatever. But some of the stuff that he was talking about, which is not necessarily 100% pertaining to the Skinwalker Ranch, like that specific place, but skinwalkers in general. Do you guys remember about that? Like just kind of
Yeah.
I kind of touched on that whole topic.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Okay,
They change
well,
shape, right, or something like that.
yeah. So basically, like a skinwalker is from like Navajo culture, and it's supposed to be like a witch or like a witch doctor or a shaman. I don't know what the proper term would be for that culture. So sorry if I offended anybody, but I thought it was more of like a shaman. But they basically can like, disguise themselves as an animal. They just basically shapeshift. And
Okay.
the whole thing is like, if you even talk about them, you're calling them to you, and it's like dangerous to do that. And like, if you're to go there and like try to talk about them, people won't talk about them with you, or like if they do, you're supposed to get blessed, like to keep them away and blah blah blah. So anyway, I know that that's all like part of the paranormal thing, but this is the part that I found really interesting. Is evidently back in, sorry, I'm trying to find the actual date because, well, regardless. So back, I think there was a dude that was a cop, and he did it for like 10 years. So basically the Navajo Nation, because they were having like so many calls that were based on like paranormal, not like just skinwalkers, but any kind of paranormal activity, they actually formed their own police force, and it was called the Navajo Nation Rangers. And it's a federal law enforcement like resource. So, they're not like federal law officers, but the federal guys will use them. They manage parks and like just kind of around the Navajo Nation, but they get called in just to investigate paranormal or supernatural cases, which is kind of crazy that they felt the need that there was such a demand for like they were getting so many calls that were just not normal calls, and just the fact that it's centered around the Navajo Nation, that they felt the need to actually form a task force just for investigating, paranormal activity. And these are guys that were like ex-law enforcement that did it. This wasn't like me and you, we just got interested one day and read a book and we're like, we're going to go become cops. Like these are guys that were actual cops prior to this. And then they ended up, just going on and taking on like this paranormal task force, I guess you could call it. But I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I guess if you go, well, I mean, you can't go there, but they have like a library just full of all the different cases. And it's just a ton of stuff from all the paranormal cases that they've investigated like over the years. And it says like this one guy here, what was his name? It was retired Lieutenant John Dover. Was he spent 31 years in police work, and the last 10 of them were investigating claims of the paranormal. So like this is a veteran cop, like a veteran police officer, like I said, not just some random guy. And
Right.
I don't know. And it says right here, like they were called to investigate objects appearing out of the air, dropping, just like I guess you would call it, poltergeist activity, objects flying across rooms, ceramic vessels exploding, and then we got involved in UFO investigations. And in one of the most solid cases, a mother and daughter describe a mass of lights floating over uninhabited reservation land in January. As they watched, the lights blinked out after a few seconds, followed by a sonic boom and a black domed craft, and the entire town of Chinle losing power. So,
Wow.
and it's just, I don't know. Let me see. It says both the Apache and Navajo tribes say they've got a Sasquatch as well, and that's one of the creatures that is most often associated. And there's like multiple reports of them having to investigate Bigfoot sightings, and it just sounds like it's, you know, something out of a movie. And like same thing here. It says one case Dover investigated had 30 witnesses. This is a Bigfoot case. We came out with physical evidence. We had hair samples, footprints, stride distances, logs that had been pulled out of the bog area and removed, and normal people wouldn't have been able to do that. Here in Arizona, so-called paranormal activity is abundant, but serious investigations are not. So, and I guess then there's, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Evidently, those people as a nation take the whole supernatural stuff like way more seriously than I would say the rest of the world. But I mean, you know, everybody has their own beliefs when it comes to that stuff, especially if it's something that you've been talking about, even like with your upbringing. You know, like I personally, I'm a skeptic for virtually everything, but I also find it extremely interesting when it comes to
Same.
supernatural stuff.
Me too. Yeah, I'm the same way. That Skinwalker, I just looked it up while we were talking. That's like the hotbed for like UFO, like weird stuff happening, right?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff happening over there. And then there's that one video, and it honestly, it looks like just fake, but it's like a very quick clip of video. And I thought that I had it in the actual video that we did before of like, you know, allegedly it's a skinwalker, but it's like kind of crawling around the desert. I don't, do you guys remember that at all?
No.
I thought I had. Oh, well, it's not really that big of a deal, to be honest. I mean, if you saw it, you'd be like, yeah, that's some pretty crappy animation. But, you know, yeah, you know, I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So this new guy, he's going to let people go. Because I'm looking at that story and I see this guy's name and everything. This Brandon Fugel or whatever it is. He's going to let people actually go out there.
Well, they were supposed to be filming a new, like a documentary on it, and they did film a documentary on it. I started watching it the other day, but I got sidetracked and I didn't get to finish. I don't think it was that one, and honestly, I don't know if the one where they had talked about that guy actually allowing people onto the property, I don't know if that one ever got finished.
Gotcha. Is the security military that, or is it just
It's private.
private security?
Yeah.
But who's hiring the security? I guess I'm confused.
The owner.
The owner.
Bigelow was doing it when he had it, when he owned it, and the Fugel is what you said his name is?
Yeah.
Okay. So the owners of the. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like military police or something.
No, it's not a government site.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. Was that what
He's
you...
putting the security out there to keep away a lot of people from checking it out.
Right.
Okay. Was that the material you were bringing up this week?
Yeah, it was that, and then I wanted to bring up the alien thing because I thought that was pretty interesting about the potential of like the government just creating the whole UFO, you know, idea to deflect from them, like testing bombs around people. Well, don't sound too interested, John.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Actually, in another thing, are you guys familiar with I don't remember if I talked about this before, the Beast of Bray Road?
No.
I never heard that one.
It's just supposed to be like a werewolf that's in Wisconsin, but
Okay.
like there's tons of sightings.
All right. Do you have some...
I don't have like a story on it, but it was something else that I was watching, and this guy, I can throw you the link later if I can dig it out. But basically, this guy, shit, I don't remember how it started, but whatever it was, he ended up casting prints because he's like, man, I found these prints like in the way back of my property, and they don't look like any animal that's like around here. And the big thing was like, what? So dogs have 4 toes and a center pad, I believe, right? Isn't that what their paws are like?
4 toes.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it's 4 toes and a center pad. So the prints that this guy found were 5 toes and a center pad, and they ended up taking it to a guy that's like, I don't know what you would even call him, but like one of the guys that knows all the animals in the area, does the tracking, knows the prints. Like, he showed it to him, and he's like, man, my first instinct would be to think that it's like a double hit, where the animal was walking and it steps with its front paw, and then its back paw follows up and steps in the same spot. So, you'd go, okay, well, that makes sense. It could have stepped on it slightly off axis, and then, a toe print ends up in a different spot, kind of distorts it. But he's like, these are clean 5-toed prints. And he's like, that's crazy because I don't know of any animal that even has that in this area at all. And the dude actually has like plaster casts of, I think he had 2 or 3 of those prints. I thought that was kind of interesting as well. But yeah.
No, I never heard of that one before. But do you have a list of sightings or anything like that?
Do I have a list of sightings?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I mean, they're kind of all over. Let's see here. I'll pull it up real quick.
It reminds me of
What's
what they call that. What's that one they called? I brought this up before.
Chupacabra?
Huh?
The Chupacabra?
I don't know what that is. I'm referring to the Dog Man. Where they show the people.
That's the one in Michigan.
That's all over though too. That's several states, right, where they've seen it.
No, it is. But I'm pretty sure the Dog Man is they call it the Dog Man is the one in Michigan, just like the Beast of Bray Road is Wisconsin. But they're still supposed to be werewolves.
Okay.
Interesting.
Which, like, I know, like, to be fair, like, the thought of a werewolf running around is just utterly ridiculous.
Man,
like,
Bear Pig.
Yeah, like, it's basically like Al Gore running around screaming "Man, Bear Pig" whenever somebody sees a werewolf. But
half man, half bear, half pig.
Yeah, dude. But like, for whatever reason, like, to me, werewolves just are fascinating, and I think it's because they've just been around so long. Just like the lore of it in general.
I don't know. I think vampires are a little more fascinating than.
See, I don't know. Vampires just seem lame.
Why?
Because they're all just lame.
What do you mean lame?
Drink blood. They're not lame.
They're pretty lame. All right. Well, define what kind of vampire are you talking about? Like, are we talking about the dude that's like, yes, I'm having a ball and I'd like you to be there? Like,
Bela Lugosi?
Yeah. Like, are we talking like that? Or are
no,
we talking about?
I'm talking about like From Dusk Till Dawn, like Mexican vampires.
Why do they gotta be Mexican vampires?
Well,
are those the ones that are cool?
Well, no. Okay, did you ever watch the series? Like, they did a series, like a TV series for From Dusk Till Dawn. And it was like, I think they did 3 seasons, but they kind of go into more of like the like Mexican lore behind those vampires, and it's more or less like a virus kind of versus a like curse or like a religious kind of thing.
Well, depending on which lore you actually follow for vampires, like, it's one of them is that it's actually a parasite.
I think maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe
okay,
not a virus.
That could have been, that could have been the same thing, but it's kind of similar. But essentially, it's using you as its host, and you're doing that to feed the parasite.
Well, and it's tied into like snakes, especially like like Selma Hayek with the snake, and
Slippery little snake.
Yeah. All right. A werewolf. Okay.
What, dude? You do know that werewolves kill vampires all day long, right? If we're gonna split hairs.
All right, fine. Let's go. Let's start watching
Only
Twilight.
when they're holding the cross up to them.
No, Dan, go away.
What are you, Team Jacob?
I have never seen any of those movies.
Yeah, you have. You probably watched them all.
Only Alone, and I cried
Both times.
both times.
Hmm.
Yes, both run-throughs. But no, I actually haven't. I don't know. I think the whole idea of werewolves is fascinating, just because like they're badass, freaking werewolves.
Well, where did that come? I mean, we know where vampires came from. It came from the guy that drank blood, right? Isn't that where the initial lore came from back in the 1600s?
Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah. Where? Huh?
No, I mean, I don't know if I haven't done a whole lot of research on vampires. There, next episode, Dan, bring all the information on vampires.
Okay.
Actually, I actually looked this up the other day because I was like, man, where did werewolves come from? And so it's
Jack
pretty old.
Nicholson, the movie Wolf.
Yes. No, stop. No, it came from Michael J. Fox. Okay.
Hey, hey.
No, it's actually from like ancient Greece. Like it's that old, and I'll read it to you right here. Let's see. Werewolves made another early appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of I'm assuming it's Lycaon. According to the legend, Lycaon, the son of Pelasgus, angered Zeus when he served him a meal made from the remains of his own sacrificed boy. As punishment, enraged Zeus turned Lycaon and his sons into wolves, and then he brought that other one that was killed back to life, and that's how werewolves were born.
See, what I'm reading here is, after being bitten by a wolf in rural Vermont, aging book editor Will Randall finds himself a youthful vigor. Randall then discovers that he's been fired and replaced by Stuart Swinton, a vicious young executive. As Randall struggles to regain his position, he becomes enthralled with Laura Aiden, his former boss's daughter, and his increasingly animal-like urges begin to overwhelm him. Here's the trailer for Wolf.
Dude, when me and Natalie first started dating, and I first bought this house, like I had nothing here, so like there was like a TV and a coffee table and like one chair. And
did you watch Wolf?
No, I didn't. But there used to be a family video by me. Oh God.
I don't think so, Will. You weren't there, Will.
Not all who are bitten change. There
What
must
is
be
wrong with
something wild within.
The moon is rising.
How do you feel?
Good.
What is that music? Anyway, sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying now. Oh,
So
yeah, so I had no TV or nothing like that here, but I had my PlayStation here. So we would go to Family Video and just rent like whatever movies. And I remember like we rented some, it was like it wasn't a French movie. Like it wasn't in French, but it was like some foreign movie that was like dubbed in English, and it was terrible. But it was about some dude that became a werewolf and just like started murdering people. And she was like terrified by this movie, and like the whole time I'm like, God, this is the biggest piece of garbage like ever. But I remember that was pretty funny.
was it worse than Paranormal Activity?
It wasn't.
I never saw that.
See, you remember Brotherhood of the Wolf? The movie. That movie was in French. My brother loved that movie.
No,
Him and
I don't remember that.
Brotherhood of the Wolf. Oh, anyway, all right. All right. So I got one thing for tonight, and then we'll see where this takes us, and we'll go from there. Have you guys ever heard the story of Lori Erica Ruff?
No.
Say that one more time.
Have you ever heard the story of Lori Erica Ruff?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. This is from Wikipedia here, but anyways, it says, Lori Erica Ruff was an identity thief who remained unidentified for nearly 6 years after her death. She was eventually identified as a native of suburban Philadelphia who left the home at age 17 in the fall of 1986. Long story short, this woman, I guess, she lived under a different name than her birth name for many, many years, got married, and lived under a different name. Well, what happened was, let's see here. In 2003, she met John Blake Ruff, the son of a prominent family in East Texas, in a Bible study class. The couple eloped in January 2004, and after getting married, they moved to Leonard, Texas. They tried several times having a child, but had trouble conceiving and suffered multiple miscarriages. During this time, this led to believe that Ruff was older than what she claimed, though the difference turned out to be less than a year. She eventually gave birth to a baby girl, and that was done through in vitro fertilization. So anyway, Ruff was extremely protective of her daughter, often refusing to let anyone hold or even take the baby with her to use the and she even took the baby to use the restroom. She would then obsessively track the Ruff's family history to find out their family recipes, but she still refused to talk about her own past. So anyway, long story short, the marriage starts to break down, and on December 24th, Christmas Eve, in the months between they eventually got separated, and on December 24th, Ruff's body was discovered in a car in the Ruff's driveway with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In the car, there were two suicide notes. One, an 11-page note addressed to my wonderful husband, and another addressed to her daughter to be opened on her 18th birthday. The Ruffs opened and read the letter, but it only contained ramblings from a clearly disturbed person and no details about her past. Well, long story short, they found out that this woman, who went by the name of Becky Sue Turner, Lori Erica Kennedy, actually had a really entangled past. This is going to make sense here in a second. So, long story short, this woman obtained a birth certificate of a dead 2-year-old girl who had died in a house fire in 1971. That name was Becky Sue Turner. This woman then moved to Texas and assumed the identity and changed her name from Becky Sue Turner to Lori Erica Kennedy. She met that guy. They got married, and the problems happened in the marriage, and she ended up killing herself. Well, turns out that this woman actually was named Kimberly Maria McLean, and she was from the Philadelphia area, and left home at the age of 17. But she lived for years under these false identities. And I guess where I'm saying it's so bizarre is that nobody realized that this woman wasn't who she said she was. And they had to, basically they found a box in her, with her possessions in there. And let me see here. After her death, her husband and her family found the evidence of her falsified identity in a lockbox in her closet. A 2013 Seattle Times feature article about the case was published in news outlets around the world and created enormous interest in the online community. So, I don't know, I just thought this was an interesting story. I mean, the fact that this woman changed her identity so many times and assumed the identity of a child that had passed away, and then changed her name again, carried on a life, and no one knew her backstory.
That's an interesting story, and I'll tell you, the Department of Vital Statistics, if I could say the word, yeah, easy for me to say, but the Department of Vital Statistics did not do a good job keeping up with things like that. A lot of people assume the identity of dead infants because, let's be honest, infants. A 6-month-old infant that dies doesn't have a driving record. They don't have a criminal record, obviously. They might not even have a social security number yet. So I don't know how it is now. I am sure things have had to have gotten a little bit more sophisticated, so that doesn't happen as much now. But I know there's been plenty of stories in the past where lots of people would, take over identity of a child that died. So
it says here, she did not get along with her mother and stepfather, and so she obtained the birth certificate of Becky Sue Turner, a 2-year-old. How do you even get a birth certificate from, a 2-year-old that passed away?
Back in the day, you had no problem. I think it was like a couple dollars to go in and get that information. It wasn't like it is now, where you need all kind of evidence. You could go to the Department of Vital Statistics. God, I can't say that damn word.
All right, say it with me. Statistics.
Statistics. Yes.
There you go.
But you could do that. It would cost you a couple dollars, and you could get that information, and go with it. I don't think you could get away with that stuff now, but in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and even 80s, I think that stuff was easier to get to.
Yeah, that's just crazy. I mean, the fact that, like I said, you can change your identity multiple times and nobody ever really knowing who you are and where you're from. And so how do they even trace it back to, who it originally was? Oh, okay, so here it says, after Lori's funeral, some of the Ruffs drove to Leonard to see if they could find out more about her in the house. The house was discovered in disarray with piles of dirty dishes, laundry, and trash stacked up around the house, as well as shredded documents and papers with incoherent scribblings on them. They then discovered the lockbox in a closet, pried it open with a screwdriver, and discovered the documentation of Ruff's past. Also found in the lockbox was a paper with several seemingly random scribblings. The suicide notes were quickly determined to be incoherent ramblings and offered no clue to the identity. Other papers included the birth certificate of Becky Sue Turner and a judge's ruling granting a name change to Lori Erica Kennedy. A friend of the family verified Becky Sue Turner had died in a house fire at the age of 2. So, in September 2011, the Ruff family, with the help of a congressional aide, sought the help of Joe Velling, an investigator for the Social Security Administration. Velling agreed to help identify her as a case of identity theft. After following numerous leads, he was stumped and sought the help of the general public through an article published on June 22, 2013. The article subsequently was republished in numerous newspapers around the world. This is how she was identified. Colleen Fitzpatrick, a former nuclear physicist who created the field of forensic genealogy, learned of the Lori Ruff in 2013 and began to work on the case. Fitzpatrick had Ruff's husband and daughter tested by a direct-to-consumer testing company, through which she was able to obtain Ruff's DNA results using a genetic genealogy phrasing techniques. After 2 years, Fitzpatrick finally identified Ruff when she discovered a third cousin match who was related to the Cassidys. Knowing the identity of the third cousin led her to Ruff's identity. So basically, the woman was figured out who she was through basic genealogy testing, which also helped the feds find the Golden State Killer.
Another thing to kind of touch on with Dan's point, like back in the day, and I believe even now, your birth certificate doesn't have your social security number on it because you need a birth certificate to apply for a social security number. So, I mean, especially back in the day, I mean, you could have just wrote out some bullshit and had somebody notarize it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
But
like I said before, there's no, a 2-year-old doesn't have a driving record. They don't have a criminal record. They don't have any of that stuff yet. So
this baby's driving a car and it's smoking. You give cigarette to baby. Yeah, I don't know. I heard this story a couple of years ago, and I thought it was interesting. Kind of creepy in the fact that, like I said, you could be with, this guy was married to this woman for, a couple of years, had a child with her, and still had no idea who she really was and where she came from.
yeah, that part's a little unbelievable. How that he didn't have a little bit more information on that.
Yeah. So. But that's all I got for tonight. Interesting little nugget there.
Nugs.
All right. Well, you want to call it a night?
Yeah, I think so. That's
I think so.
kind of like our first somewhat full episode back, shaking the rust off a little bit.
Yeah. Still need to get a little bit tighter, but, we'll get there. Again, we're just trying to spitball. My goal is to just come on and have fun and see if we can get people to participate. So we didn't get any participation tonight. If you like what you heard, which I can't imagine you would, but leave a comment below. If there's something that you want to talk about, or even if you have an interest in something that you think would be interesting to talk with us about, leave a comment and we'll reach out to you and maybe even have you on. I'm not closed-minded. I know Buddha is, so.
No, man, I'll talk about
Very
whatever,
much.
and I'll tell Dan that he's stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll call it a night here from the Mistake on the Lake for Dan Rady, Buddha, and whoever else is listening out there.
We have a comment here?
Do we have a comment? Oh, hey, thanks, Sean. That's kind of cool.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. All right. Well,
I didn't see what it said. I literally just closed the page. See, I leave and we get a little bit of love.
yeah, that's cool. Well,
That's because that's what we got the love, because you left.
right.
Dude, fair enough, man.
All right. Well, I'm used to having the music in the background so I can segue out of things and set the tempo, but I don't know how to do it now. So I didn't think about that when I was closing down what I wanted to do. And
Well,
so,
yeah, we can tell, and it shows.
all right. Well, thanks a
Way
lot.
to be unprepared.
All right. Well,
All
now,
right, everybody. Thanks. Tell us if we suck. If we were pretty okay, let us know. Anything you guys want to hear us talk about, we can take a look into. Or even if it's just general banter, anything you want to know, just shoot a comment. Or I don't really know how this works because I never am on here. John generally manages it. So I don't know if there's messages and whatnot. But all that being said, thanks for tuning in. And we'll catch you next time.
good night.
Yep. Thank you, guys.